For the next session, I would like to invite Vikram. He's the SVP Global GTM at Capita. And while Amit spoke about how to effectively communicate with employees, Vikram would talk contrary 5 causes of employee ignorance of equity awards. So, Vikram, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Abhishek, and it's a pleasure to be in front of all of you today. When Jalaj spoke to me a couple of months back, he said, I've picked out a topic for your session. You're going to talk about ignorance. I said, Jalaj, I'm keenly aware of mine, but do you really want me to expose it to the world? He said, no, it's employee ignorance. So that's what I'm here to talk about. What can employees get wrong when it comes to equity awards, when it comes to your ESOP schemes, and what can you as HR and finance leaders do to help them get it right? So why is it a big deal if employees don't understand what they've sort of got here? I'm going to borrow one of Jalaj's frameworks here. When can you deem your ESOP scheme or equity scheme to be successful? There's a certain cost in terms of implementing your scheme. There's an upfront cost, there's an administration cost, and there's a certain cost you're going to show in your P&L as well. As against that, there's a certain perceived value which your employees are going to get. How do employees perceive this value? I'll perceive a value as an employee if I believe in an upside in what I hold in terms of my equity awards. And if it's an unlisted company, I would also want some sense of when I can realize that value in terms of liquidity. So it's a function of these two. As long as employees perceive more value than what it costs you to implement a scheme, your scheme is successful. But if employees are unaware, if they're ignorant, and if they misunderstand what you've sort of put in front of them, then they're not going to perceive value, and that means your scheme's not going to deliver the desired results. So ignorance is something which should be dealt with at organizations. So I'm going to give a little bit of a sense of what we have seen in the market as we speak to employees, as we maybe conduct some town halls, and what have you heard in terms of where employees can get it wrong. One is just understanding the basic premise of equity awards, stock options, and of equity compensation. Common misconceptions, people come, especially in hiring conversations, no, I have options worth 20 lakhs. Now, what does it mean? Is the underlying share, is it worth 20 lakhs? Is it the share less the strike price? Is that 20 lakhs? Is that the fair value? Most employees are unaware of this, and in some cases, people also communicate the value of the underlying, and people are not aware as much about the strike price. So any option value, the simplest way is to probably think of it as my share value less what I need to pay to acquire it. But do employees understand that? It's something which you need to sort of communicate to them. I have got a grant, an equity award grant from the company. That's great, that's value to me. My net worth is increased by whatever that number is. This misconception also is compounded by the fact that some companies also added to the CTC. So people really look at it and say, oh, great, like this is my net worth and this is what I'm really getting. But no, you haven't really got it. You have to go through vesting. There may be conditions attached to it. You're going to get it over a period of time, and the value may accrete or can go down as well. The expectation among the company, among the employee, is that you're going to see an upward trending curve, and the share price and the underlying is going to accrete over time. Is that always the case? Not necessarily. It's dependent on company performance, dependent on market conditions, and is ultimately an equity risk which the employee is taking. People like to look at the bright side. They expect, yes, last 2 years, the company stock appreciated by 50%. I expect maybe another 50% in the next couple of years or so. Will that really pan out? We're not entirely sure. Yes, I've gone through vesting. I've completed my vesting, the conditions. I have the shares in hand. Now I can do whatever I want with it. Is that the case? Maybe so in a listed entity. But if it's an unlisted company, if it's a private limited company, there are restrictions on transfer of these shares, and there are restrictions in terms of liquidity, like when liquidity can happen and who can participate in that as well. So even if in an unlisted company I choose to exercise, I become a shareholder, I'm still subject to the restrictions which the rest of the shareholders, sort of have. which may be imposed by investors. Could be like a right of first offer, right of first refusal, a preemptive right, etc. So these are a few things which employees may not get right in terms of their basic understanding of how stock options work or equity awards work. Now, specific to companies, many times employees may not be aware of the specific plan rules, starting from who's eligible to sort of be granted equity if there is a certain plan in place or a certain criteria in place. Some companies have time-based criteria. You have to complete at least 1 year before I even make a grant to you. Sometimes it could be based on bands. It's only manager level and above who are entitled for equity compensation. But do employees understand that? It has to be communicated properly. If I am eligible, what is my entitlement? Is there a standard which is followed by the company to determine the quantum of my equity awards? Is there a scale? Is it linked to performance? Is it linked to my seniority? Some companies may not have this. It may be ad hoc, determined by management. But if there is a certain sort of set of rules for this, it's good if the employees get to sort of know about this. Most common question which we see in town halls: what is my exercise period? What happens to my options when I leave the company? How long can I hold them for? So what is my exercise period? What is it as long as I continue in service? How long do I have to exercise my options? And what happens when I leave? Is it going to be a shorter period? Is it linked to my tenure? These are things which as an employee I may not be completely aware of. But yes, this helps in terms of my appreciation of the options itself. In unlisted companies, are there restrictions on exercise? Many times companies may link exercise to liquidity events. So the value continues to accrete, but I cannot become a shareholder. Am I aware of this, or is it my assumption that yes, I can exercise and I can sell? Similar to what I talked about on the first slide, to clarify what the plan rules say. And what is a plan for liquidity? When can I really expect in an unlisted company? When can I really expect to monetize at least a portion of my options? What happens to my options in case there is a strategic event, there's a change of control? Are there clauses to accelerate my vesting, to give me the value of whatever options I'm having? Or am I going to be subject to what the incoming investor or acquirer is going to do? Is some of it going to be carried forward? Again, a very thorough reading of the plan rules will answer a lot of these questions, but you're talking about a legal document. People who are not from the finance or legal industry may struggle to understand what each of that says. So it helps to sort of communicate that proactively. A lot of employees struggle to understand how taxation works when it comes to stock options. It's 2 tiers of taxation. You're going to have a perquisite tax when you exercise, based on the FMV as on the date of exercise, and you're going to have capital gains when you actually sell, which again is dependent on the holding period. So what is it going to be? How long should I hold these sort of shares before I sell? What do I need to pay today in the form of perquisite tax? These are things which employees may have a bit of a sense of, but again, they may not really have the numbers with them. And like a very specific instance in terms of RSUs being granted by a foreign entity, let's say to a India resident option holder, I am going to suffer taxation on every vesting date. I'm going to get these shares in hand and I'm going to suffer taxation. Am I aware of that? So if I am getting options versus RSUs from an international entity, or if I have a choice, as Amit sort of covered before, will this play into the choice as well? So a few determinants of the decisions which employees will make based on how the tax rules are structured. I'm talking a bit more specific to India. Of course, it changes if there are international employees as well. And coming to international cross-border options. So either you can have an Indian resident employee who is getting options from a foreign entity. A lot of even India businesses may have a US holdco or a holdco in a different geography. Now I've got options. I have gone through vesting. I want to exercise. Whatever I remit in the form of exercise price is subject to the LRS limits of 250K per employee. It's a fairly generous limit. It's not very likely, unless you're a very senior employee with a very high strike price, that you'll actually exhaust the limit. But maybe employees who are trying to build a portfolio of international assets may be utilizing their LRS limits. So what employees should not face is a situation where I've used it up for a year and then I discover that I want to exercise and I just can't send money outside India for this reason. May not be super common, but something for employees to appreciate in a sense. As employees exercise or as they vest their RSUs, as they become shareholders, it's required to disclose that to the income tax authorities as a foreign asset. This is something which a lot of people miss out. It's an element of personal compliance, but if I don't do that properly, I'm going to have challenges when I ultimately liquidate and when I get these proceeds and when I try to repatriate these proceeds back to India. The tax authorities are going to ask us, how did he get this huge dollar inflow? And no, okay, if it's a foreign asset, then where did you disclose the foreign asset in your return? When did you actually acquire it? And this creates a lot of complications there. So a few, sort of specific actions and a few specific areas for employees to come up the curve on if they are getting options from a foreign entity. The sort of flip of this is a domestic entity issuing stock options to a foreign national. Now, what complications will that sort of create? Most foreign nationals will probably assume that the process is going to be same as getting options from an entity in their home country, which may be very different. To get money into India and for the strike price to be remitted from these foreign employees into India, you need to have a demat account open, you need to have your PAN, etc. done, KYC process, compliances to be done, which typically takes a fair bit of time in India. So if there is some sort of liquidity event or if there's some sort of excise window being opened, then are you providing this time to your employees? Are they aware that it's going to be a little bit of an involved process? Companies typically need to educate and to support employees through this process. And in terms of remittance of the excise price itself, you need to ensure, unless it's cashless excise with a trust, that you need to ensure that the excise price is sort of sent to the company before the shares can be allotted. And if you are remitting it, you're going to work with a bank, and the remittance needs to take place in a very specific fashion with specific instructions under the right purpose code. A lot of employees struggle. It may be a very small amount. It may be like $1 or $5 or something like that, which they need to remit, but they get the purpose code wrong and the money gets returned back to them. So a lot of frustration we see with foreign employees to say, why are your regulations so complex? And why am I not able to enjoy the benefit of the options which I've actually vested? And why can't I participate in this liquidity scheme where I might miss the window? So these are a few things which may come up. Most companies realize this only when they start an excise window or they start a liquidity process, but to proactively address this beforehand makes sense. And finally, your stock options are effectively a financial asset, and employees should perceive it to be so and take the right financial decisions with respect to these assets. So the decision of should I exercise now or should I wait for a liquidity event or a listing event? What are the benefits? What is a tax arbitrage of sorts which may sort of accrue to me if I choose to exercise now? As a flip side, I need to go out of pocket in terms of taxes. Am I comfortable doing that? What is my expectation in terms of the appreciation and the tax I'll save versus the liquidity which I'm losing today in terms of paying this tax? It's a very financial decision. It requires the employee to make a decision with respect to do some crystal ball gazing in terms of where the stock price can actually head to and when liquidity can happen. So some guidance from the company to help the employee make this decision would really help. Do I have financing options to exercise to basically cover for my tax and strike price? If I'm a listed company, I probably have more options. If it's unlisted, it's going to be a little bit tougher. But as an employee, am I aware of these options? Is the company helping me, at least putting me in touch with the right people to sort of get some of these options off the ground? That's important. Sell to cover is something which Vishnu already covered. It may be an option for employees to sort of finance their tax and exercise without taking on debt, without suffering an interest, expense here. And if I'm in a listed company, am I aware of the insider trading regulations? I may not be able to sell immediately. I may need to exercise. I may need to hold, cross the cooling off period, and only then trade. So am I aware of these regulations? Am I subject to them? And am I sort of compliant with them? So I've just given a very broad brush of what employees can potentially get wrong. What can we do, and what can HR and finance leaders like yourself do to make sure this ignorance is dispelled and to get the maximum value for your option schemes and for your equity schemes? Communication is something which Amit touched upon. Periodic town halls will help to have a channel of communication where the HR leaders or the founders themselves can go in front of the employees, reinforce some of these things, touch upon some of these things, and give a window for employees to raise questions and get those questions clarified. Having some sort of an online portal, a channel for employees to understand the wealth creation, to take the right financial decisions, and to model their gains, their taxation, potential future gains, etc., will sort of help. Any sort of FAQs or any resources which the companies can create and share with employees to de-jargonize the whole process, something which preferably can be kept in plain English, in easy to understand language, will help in terms of dispelling this ignorance. And any option in terms of guiding employees to the right online resources. A lot of employees are very curious about stock options. A lot of them are very interested, and that bodes well for the company. But is there any place where employees can be guided in terms of, you can go here, you can learn more, and you can probably take the right decisions if you spend some time on this portal? That is something which companies can do. Either create these resources themselves or just create a compendium of online resources to share with employees. And ultimately, communicating the wealth creation potential in a very transparent fashion to help employees understand, yes, where can we be as a company in the next 2 years or so? What sort of price appreciation can we expect? If it's an unlisted company, then what are our plans over the next maybe 2 to 3 years? What valuation can we expect? What sort of exit event are we sort of working towards? And to even link it to performance metrics, to say, yes, I'm expecting 3x of the value today, but that will require all of us to deliver, let's say, $100 million of revenue. So your work is cut out for you as your employees. Please go ahead, please deliver this value and enjoy that benefit for yourself. To create this, I would say, chain in terms of employees' performance to companies' performance to valuation to ultimately the employee's net worth. That completes a circle, and that ideally should help employees take the right decisions. And finally, if it's an unlisted company, some guidance on what monetization options, what liquidity options may be available. It's very difficult for companies and for management to guarantee liquidity. But at the very least, to give a sense that directionally this is what we are thinking. We may conduct a liquidity event as we sort of raise our Series D round of funding, which may take 2 years. So no promises, but this is what you guys need to deliver, and I expect Series D to happen. And I'll probably allow you guys to monetize 25% of your vested options. Something like this, while it does not constitute a commitment, would still help in terms of employees, having that excitement and maybe planning for taxation, planning for some of what I touched upon in the previous slides. So that's pretty much what I have to cover. I'm aware that I'm standing between all of you and maybe like a session of drinks. So great. So we are around here, happy to interact during the networking session as well. But thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.